conveyed. And then in Jerry's conversation today, it's about really learning and knowing from a different perspective. So I want to welcome Jerry Wellik to our conversation today. And Jerry, if you wouldn't mind just giving a little thought, a little warm up for yourself about who you are a little bit, and then we'll immerse ourselves in your great conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. I'm happy to be here with you today, and we're with some of my favorite people and on my favorite topic, so this is a real joy for me. I'm a master of Spring Forest Qigong, and I've been with Master Lin and a follower of his teachings for about 23 years now. So it seems like it's just a short period of time. It's gone so very, very fast. But it's so I'm a master healer, certified instructor, and practitioner.
Great, thank you, Jerry. So how about if we move along from there, and if I ask you, how did you decide upon the title of this conversation? Where did that come from?
Okay, so my topic is something like, what are metaphors for? We're using them all the time. It's how we convey information, and I didn't realize, until years after I'd already been doing things in storytelling, how powerful they really are. And I had the opportunity to work with some great teachers and who pointed out that oftentimes best teaching was happening when you were.
Sorry about that. My office is downtown Duluth, so we got the neighborhood in here. Got the neighborhood.
Actually, that's maybe a signal for us to go deeper. So
yeah.
Actually, we can utilize anything that's happening around us. It's one of the things about storytelling. But when I first realized, or I guess was pointed out to me, how much we rely on stories and how much I was using stories without knowing that I was doing it, was I was co-teaching with a friend who's now become a longtime friend, but we were co-teachers when I was in my graduate program at the University of North Dakota. The guy's name is Art Spring, and he would say, he said something one day, he quoted Albert Camus, and he said this quote, he said, "It's altogether fitting and proper to talk about one thing in terms of another." And that caught my attention, so I delved into that a little bit more about what does he really mean by that. And Art had recently come from the Peace Corps. He had to leave the Peace Corps because he had issues with heat. He couldn't, it was just too hot for him. So, but he had learned so much from his working with people in different parts of Africa about the use of metaphor and the metaphors that they used. And then he had a reputation of being a master of the metaphor. So when I first started working with Art, I thought that I was going to be teaching him because his background wasn't in special education, and we were teaching a foundations in special education course. And what I found out was that when I let go of my idea about how to teach, I realized that he was really the master.
Yeah.
And
it's funny like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so at first I was confused. I didn't realize how that was such an important part of the whole thing, because I had to let go of what I thought I knew. And that was, I mean, it just happened over and over again. Just to give you an example, the name of the course was Foundations in Special Education, like an overview of working with kids with exceptionalities and differences. And I chose a book. I had been teaching that course at St. Cloud State University and had taught the course numerous times. I was using a book by Norris Herring called Behavior of Exceptional Children. And then the texts that he chose were Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll and Never Cry Wolf by Farley Mount. And at first I thought, my gosh, what does this have to do with it? It's just like, so, I mean, it just kept opening up new things for me. And I mean, at the time, this was back in the late 70s when I was doing this work. And I thought it was about storytelling. But the more I've worked with Master Lin and Spring Forest Qigong, now I have come to realize it's more about listening, story listening. And when you really get quiet, then you start this tuning into the metaphors that we're using that we don't know that we're using.
So could you say a little bit more about that? Because when I was starting our little introduction here, and you talked about Camus, I had that sense that this is like another way of knowing. Like there's one way of knowing something. Here's the literal sense, and here's the order of things. Those are great scientific kind of ways of knowing things. But here you're hinting at, in a broad way, there really is another way of knowing things. Like it's something you were saying about really deepening yourself in the story. It's really about the listening, something deeper than the actual, things that went on in the story. Could you say a little bit more?
Well, I didn't realize everything that we've ever done is a resource. Every experience we've ever had. And sometimes we just take it for granted. And really, it's such a gift. No matter what our background has been, we can look at it and it really is a gift. I spent the first 15 years of my life on a farm in Iowa. And I didn't realize how powerful the oral stories were that they were using. Metaphors about the weather, about the growth of plants, about the timing of when it's time to go and plant. And I mean, just little things. I used to just think my dad was unusual about some things. But he had at one time, before, I mean, earlier in his life, he'd had a farm accident and he'd had a issue with his left elbow. But he had this feeling when the sun was going down at night, he would have a feeling, a signal, whether it was going to be raining the next day or if it was a good day for us to go out and cultivate. And it was just like at the time I thought, well, this is just one of Dad's weirdisms. But now I realize that he was getting some kind of a signal, and it was actually where he had a wound where he had a kind of a special gift. I mean, it seems kind of unusual, but oftentimes now what I
So it's almost then you're saying even the injury to the elbow, it wasn't just his consciousness about his elbow, I have a hurt elbow. It's like, no, it's deeper than that. Here's the hurt elbow, but there's a deeper story of what that means now.
Yeah, and see, there were lots of ways of his knowing that, I'm now realizing. I mean, he died in 1960 when I was 14 years old. But at that time, I didn't realize, I really wasn't a handy person on the farm, and that was right early on. It was kind of obvious that I wasn't going to be a farmer. But but in a way, the stories, I was kind of like the kind of person that, soaked so much in that I didn't know that I was taking in.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so I realized that he was very much a social learner. He talked with other and he gleaned from them the strategies that they used and then incorporated them. And I feel that's what I do now in Spring Forest Qigong. I'm a master, but I feel like I'm just a beginner in so many ways because I still have this love of, I wonder, I wonder what special talent this person is bringing. So, for instance, I've been the last few weeks just so much enjoying the Spring Forest Qigong, every day Qigong with different leaders. And each of them brings something just a little bit different. We're doing the same curriculum, so to speak, but everybody has just a certain little
Mhm.
signature. And I didn't realize that until people in the Spring Forest community. Deborah Lynn was one of them who pointed out that my use of stories and poems and metaphors was like my signature.
Right.
So
Right.
I started thinking, oh my gosh, that's a gift I have that I like that part about myself, that I love stories and I love poems. And I associate poems with moments, just some special moment that I had with somebody. And then something may have happened and I associate with that as a poem or a story.
I'm going to get back to that in a second. But as you're talking now, like Deborah has said this about you, the storytelling, it says not only is there another way of knowing, it's like when I talk to Jerry or when Jerry talks, I need to have another way of listening.
Yeah.
And instead of, Jerry, will you get to the scientific point in your story? Can you tell me exactly what's going on with the story? Not, I am telling you, but not like a scientific message.
Mhm.
There's another way that you need to listen to what's going on in your stories, in your metaphors,
Yeah,
because you use them not just, oh, let me tell you a story. Oh, let me tell you another story. I mean, your metaphors, your poetry has a specific purpose why you select it or why you write it.
yes. What I would say is that it's paradoxical, and it's like if I had to just put in a nutshell what I think my purpose and what I'm good at is a master of the unknown. Because
Oh,
I want to know so that if I can just be quiet and get into this very still place of listening, I can then connect with this person and find out what metaphor or how that person is knowing. And it's like I don't want to know ahead of time because I don't want to have this expectation. I want to be in the moment. And the word that comes up for me, I think Master Lin is a master of refinement and always making things better and looking at how can we make this more powerful and more deeper, longer lasting in a shorter amount of time. And the term that comes to my mind is improv. Like we're
mm,
always doing improv. So when I come to you today, I don't want to have it all laid out and saying, okay, I'm going to have a date with Glenn today. I'm going to have a meeting with Glenn. Here's what I'm going to say. This is how we're going to say it. No, I want to just come and say, this is Glenn today. This is this day in June 2023. And I'm a different person than I was than when I gave a presentation 6 months ago or even if I talked on the same topic before, it's not the same. We're different.
So, are you saying then in the metaphors or in the story that you tell, there's now a specific purpose? Like I might have 100 different stories I could share. Oh no, this is the one that's going to fit in this situation. I'm paying attention to my audience, so to speak, or to those around me in order to teach through the metaphor, through the story. Therefore, it requires someone to listen to what's going on, not just, oh, that was a good story. That's really profound.
I'd say come with a purpose, to be on purpose all the time. And I mean, just the power of a word like education. The word education comes from the Latin educare, which means to bring forth from within. So if I'm in this situation with you and I'm in this place where I'm an educator, which is what I believe that's where I am at the core, as a teacher, an educator, then I come to this, and my purpose in that sense is to bring forth the best part of you, to light you up, to ignite your chi, so that in our interaction, by me being the best Jerry Wellik I can be, I can bring forth from Master Glenn Tobey, the best of him in this situation, in this improv interaction that we're having today. And we're here on a specific topic. What are metaphors for? Well, they're for us going deeper, because if we just give the facts and we just stay at the, kind of the scientific level, I mean, this really is a science. It's a science and an art all at once. It's not like now we're doing science, now we're doing art. It's like everything happening at once. So to be my best at that, I have to be paying attention.
So then your intent seems like, how can I tell a story that has a depth to it that's going to cause not cause, but influence that the other person can come almost better than me, smarter than me, because of the goal is to help them understand life so they become more aware than perhaps you or I. So it's a very loving, yeah.
As we're going deeper, and I think that's the thing about, as we go deeper, you don't even realize you're doing it, that you're using the story. You don't even know that it's a story. You lose yourself in this. And one of the images that keeps coming up for me, or a feeling, is the farmer knows how important the roots are. So if you're planting something, you have to have the roots go deep. So it's at the root level. And I think of that with my work now with Spring Forest Qigong, is that when we go deeper, we get to the root of things, the root of whatever it is, plants, trees, weeds, whatever. And they all have a purpose. And I mean, and I think of something that's really almost humorous for me. When I grew up, sunflowers were a weed. And so that when, like this time of year, we'd be out there and we'd have to dig those sunflowers out, and they were pretty tough to get out. They had a pretty tough root system. But when the first time I made my trip to Grand Forks, North Dakota, where I studied, and I'm looking out the window there from Highway 71 on the trip from Fargo to Grand Forks, and I see all these fields of sunflowers. And I think, what? They're weeds, and they're growing weeds, and they're in rows. And I mean, that I'll never forget that whole trip, because it was just, I mean, it was not, only about 200 miles from where I am right now, but it was like being in a different place. It was like, this is so interesting. And just for that short kind of distance from where I am in Minnesota and from where I grew up in Iowa, I mean, there were different metaphors and different things that were valued, and there were terms that I started learning. The first one of the first terms, there was kind of a lot of dust in the air the day that my wife and I, and at that time our daughter was like 5, and she had long pigtails, and there was this dirt that was coming. And by the time we got to Grand Forks, Heather had all of this dirt in her hair and in her pigtails. And we went into the student union, and somebody said, "Oh, that's snert." I said, "Snert? Never heard of that." Well, snert was a combination of snow and dirt, and it was a term that they use up there. So it's just like, oh my gosh, I just have to pay attention. I could have started thinking, oh gosh, these people, they talk such a weird way. Well, no, that was the culture.
So it was like,
And
again, it was another way of listening to what was going
yeah,
on around you.
yeah, but so many things happening at once that not even knowing that you're doing it. It's just you're such a part of it. And I think of
See,
mhm.
go ahead. I do have a question for you, but finish your thought.
Well, I just like, I just at that time, it was like a little bit like when something seems brand new to you, you're learning everything like so much at once. And I think that's what I like about myself, is that I can come to a situation and be like a total beginner.
One of the titles that you were toying with before, over the weeks where you were getting ready, was Metaphors for Healing. Could you say a little bit how it directly, is connected to healing, which is really such a powerful part of Spring Forest Qigong?
Yeah. So what I would mean by that is when you simply change the way you're viewing something, that it changes the meaning of the story that you're taking in. So it's like when something occurs to you and you have some kind of a symptom, it's really a message. It's a good thing. And I like, there's a poem I've used many times. And in this poem, there's a term, marvelous error. And it's like a marvelous error. We thought we wanted one thing and we're getting something else. And we would like to think of it as an error, but it was a marvelous error. The universe was giving us something different. So,
Wow. So
like,
somehow, like a marvelous error can almost then penetrate, kind of a defense I might have. I'm not going to listen to this. I made a mistake. All that. Oh, wait a minute. I might have thought I made a mistake. I made an error, but wow, it really is beautiful. A marvelous error that showed me more.
yeah. Yeah, if I could just recite a little bit of that poem, it's called
Yeah.
"Last Night as I Was Sleeping" by Antonio Machado. And the second verse is the one I like so well. And this is translated by Robert Bly. He was a Minnesota poet who just died a couple of years ago. He did a lot of translations of Machado's work and other persons. But the second verse goes, well, if I can do the two first verses. Last night as I was sleeping, I dreamt, marvelous error, that a spring was breaking out in my heart. And I said, along which secret aqueduct, O water, are you coming to me, water of a new life that I have never felt before? Last night as I was sleeping, I dreamt, marvelous error, that I had a beehive here inside of my heart, and the golden bees were making white combs and sweet honey from all of my old failures. So the metaphor that this had this headache, and I mean, that was in my case. I had these headaches before I started working with Master Lin, and uh, I just wanted to get rid of those headaches. I mean, it was just like, oh my God. And now I realize that was a signal that, hey, there's Jerry, there's some things that you're doing that bringing this on. I mean, one of the first things that I learned that was a very simple thing is I was drinking more coffee. I mean, I was just drinking coffee instead of drinking water. And I mean, and then I went through this period of when I had to wean myself away from coffee, the headaches got worse until they started getting,
Yeah.
because I wanted to change it right away. And it was like, I kind of like had an addiction. But now I look at that as saying, my gosh, that was such a good learning thing. And the fact that
Yeah.
I had these headaches, now I feel like I'm pretty good at working with people with headaches.
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
and several other things. I had, I mean, things that didn't think could change, but this was back in 1999. I'm a Vietnam vet, and I was diagnosed with PTSD and all of those kinds of things. And part of it, I was diagnosed with some kind of a bone disease that they figured that it was not going to change. I had to just like live with it, and all of the symptoms of that have gone away. It's changed.
Mm.
I have this idea. I mean, I have this image in my mind that my bones are nice and strong, and every time I drink water and every time I eat foods that are healthy for me, when I'm eating some nuts, or this is really medicine for my bones. So what appeared to be something to be a negative thing, I think now, well, all I have to do is let go of that idea that this
Mhm.
permanent. Just look at
Wow.
everything as everything, every moment we can change by changing the metaphors in our way of thinking about it. I would like to
Could
tell you
you?
one little. Okay. Yeah. No, that's right.
No,
I'll just
please.
hold this.
I was going to
Well,
ask you what influence Rumi had on you, but maybe you can combine the two.
yeah. Okay. That'd be good. Yep. I will do that. I'm going to just make a note of that. And what influenced Rumi? That's a great question. But just like the meaning of a word, um, you probably realize I've been working with Nancy Rivera and Suling Bisano Hao for some time on our handbook and how to use Spring Forest Qigong. And when I first was coming onto the project, they'd asked me if I wanted to be an editor. And I had this idea of editor is, because I worked in academia for years, and editing was like correcting papers. They had to be done APA style, American Psychological Association style. And I didn't like that term of editor. I didn't think I would be good at it or wanted to do it. And then in a conversation, I mean, I felt like we were always lifting each other up. I mean, it was just so much fun working on this project, and it didn't seem like work at all. And a couple of times I told Nancy, I said, I don't think like I'm doing anything. Well, I've changed my idea about that now. We were just doing so much just by lifting each other up and paying attention. But at one point, Su Ling said, editing really means refining. It doesn't have anything to do with correcting. And then it just in my mind, I said, oh my God, this is what we're doing all the time. And I was thinking of editing as correcting, just the difference of that one word. I started thinking of it differently, and then started valuing what I was doing because I was feeling like we're just improving this. We're just trying to refine and make it better. So just that one word and I think that happens with us so frequently, is we use a word and it brings up experiences or connotations that mean something else to somebody different.
So just a
But
quick insert. That's what you're talking about earlier about now listening to another way that that word editing was spoken about. And when you listen
right.
deeper, then it brought you to a new world, so to speak.
Hmm. But your
Yeah. So how about
question
yeah, Rumi?
about Rumi, yeah, when I first got introduced to Rumi, I mean, it was uh, it was again, it was just like this is kind of confusing. This is, but I felt good when I was doing it. And what I found, and actually, I was given a book by a friend of mine. He was my advisor and longtime friend, a book on Rumi and his counterpart, Shams of Tabriz. And that first book, when I read it, it was like, my gosh, this is how I want to be, the relationship of these two people, of how when they met, it was like some brand new worlds opened up. And what they started doing, Rumi, these poems just came out of him spontaneously. They were just like oral things that were just coming from, and that just seems so powerful to me. It's like, well, that's like what when good stories are coming to you, they just flow through you, and it's about the relationship. But the whole community that Rumi belonged to, some 700 years ago, was a community for opening the heart.
Mm.
And I thought, my goodness, that's what Spring Forest Qigong is about. And the most important part of it is how we relate to each other and how we come together. And I mean, people have told me this over and over again about why they like Spring Forest Qigong. And for me also is I feel like it's a group of people that come together. We treat each other like we're family, the most important person that I'm with. And I feel like rather than, it's not competition, but we're trying to bring forth the best from each of us so that we become better ourselves. And so the more we
Mm.
give away, the more we get. So just that idea of it's that kind of a community. And I've connected with several people. I find it pretty easy for me actually to learn poems by heart. When I love a poem, I can learn it by heart. And one of the poems, if I can recite a Rumi poem for you, and I carry poems in my pocket. I know this
Please.
poem
Yeah,
very well.
please.
But I like to just have it with me, so. And the name of it is Some Kiss
There's
We
something
Want.
there's something about go ahead. What was the name of it?
Yeah. Some
Could
Kiss
you
We
repeat
Want.
that? Whoa.
Some kiss we want. Okay, so it goes like this. There is some kiss we want with our whole lives, the touch of spirit on the body. Seawater begs the pearl to break its shell, and the lily, how passionately it needs some wild darling. At night, I open the window and ask the moon to come and press its face against mine. Breathe into me, close the language door, and open the love window. The moon won't use the door, only the window. So
Mm.
I recited that poem many years ago at a level 4 gathering at um, I was going to say Brainerd, but at the Superior Shores where we meet. Is that what it's called again?
Northern
Superior Shores? Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, after I had recited that poem, Emily Jarrett Hughes, whom I co-teach with now, said, something about that just went directly in. It was just like a connection with her.
Yeah.
So I'm co-teaching with her now, and oftentimes recite that poem because it brings back that feeling of the connection. And I felt like there was
Yeah.
a direct connection with lots of other people. And I don't exactly know how it works, but the lines close the language door and open the love window. the moon won't use the door, only the window. And so the images that I get is the moon is that lower, the light in the lower dantian. It doesn't want the language door. It wants to open the love window. It's the love
Another,
that's,
another way of listening. We're not talking
yeah,
about the moon coming through the window. That's just an image. It's that deeper
right.
connection of what that means.
Hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then, I mean, it's like, and one of the things that some of the simplest things that Master Lin has taught me, and from the practice of Spring Forest, is I guess I knew it, but I didn't know it the way he puts it into a simple thing. But he said, learn from your students; they're your teachers,
Uh,
and that because I have kind of a interesting thing. I taught at St. Cloud State. I was a university professor. I'm still emeritus and doing some things with poetry in Spring Forest, so I still feel like I have a connection. But I had like 20, couple of 22, 23 years before I got into Spring Forest. I was a teacher, a professor. And then about 20 some years later, so about two sides of my career. And when I moved into Spring Forest Qigong, I moved up. It became such a different thing. And it became so much more about listening to the students. And I didn't have to have all of the knowledge because I was really drawing the knowledge from inside of them that's already there.
However, I think also, Jerry, that you have equipped yourself with so many experiences, so many thoughts, so much, you know, reading, reflecting, meditating. So you have always been trying to fuel or fill yourself with all sorts of things, almost in your kind heart. How can I find a way of connecting what I know in my heart to someone who needs to hear that information for their heart? And then what language or what story can I use from my own experiences that will connect into the heart of someone else?
Yeah.
So using the metaphor to connect, to the healing in
Hmm.
another person.
Yeah. And everything is kind of like a metaphor. I have a cup here and I have some water in it. Well, the whole idea of like I can just think of the cup is I have to have a full cup myself. Master Lin says that to be able to
Yeah,
help others. So I can be practicing Spring Forest Qigong every moment of my life, filling my cup so that I have a variety, I have a repertoire of tools that I can use so that I have a whole lot of tools. And then if I have 50 tools in this cup, let's say, I can deal with lots of different people in different situations. But if I just had one tool, and there was a quote from Abraham Maslow, who I was kind of fond of. Abraham Maslow used to say, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to treat everything you meet as if it were a nail. And for me, that's like, okay, that's kind of like I need to have a lot of tools because,
yeah,
not everybody's a nail. Some of them are, different, it's just different parts of the metaphor. So I think everything I've studied a lot of different um, approaches, as you have, as a psychotherapist, you've probably studied a lot of different modalities to get to where you are now. But I think like I've taken some from each of them and seeing how I can incorporate it. But
right.
but the Spring Forest has been a paradigm that take everything I've learned. And I really admire what the training that you and Katrina and others have been doing through Spring Forest because we want to have people have their own individual signature, but still we
Yeah,
have to have these common universal things. And that's basically what I've been dealing with ever since I've been a teacher. is how do we do that so that you don't lose the essence by following something that's takes us actually away from the path. So we have to know, it's just like you have to continually examine what is the way. And I mean, I think of that too as like, gosh, the way for me, I've learned so much about just reading and rereading and understanding some of the Tao Te Ching. And just, I mean, every time I teach a class, I run into somebody that asks some great questions that helps me to start wanting to dig into it in another way. But the way I understand it, the first verse of the Tao Te Ching is if you think you know what it is, that's not it.
Right.
If you think you can say what it is, that's not it. And
you mentioned my task as a psychotherapist. It's almost like every time I see somebody, I might have seen them for 2 years or 3 years or the first time. It's almost like I ask them at that moment, what is it that you want to talk about? Even though we've been talking for 10 years or 2 years or 2 days, now your life is what? New. Now what is it that you need today to make sense of or what story can I share with you today, given what's gone on in your life? So say, could you share, do you have a poem that kind of maybe bring this together in our time that we have?
Okay, I remember one of the last times I was with you, you asked if I had a poem, and then I just didn't have one. So I wrote a poem. Gosh, let me see, where did I put it? I called it Song. I don't know that I have that poem right here. I'll do a different one. I'll do a different poem. I teach a poem. What's that?
Good, please. No, please. Go ahead.
Tomorrow, today's Tuesday. No, well, anyway, this week I'm doing, I do a poetry, we call it poetry drop-in. And I'm doing poems on trees. And our friend Shane Krukow from Iowa Falls, Iowa, he has this connection with trees. And trees, and he built his place on this rock. I mean, those stories about farm metaphors there are so powerful. But I've learned this poem by heart. It's called Trees. And whenever I see a tree now, I think of like that connection with Shane and how I want to relate with trees. But this is by W.S. Merwin. It's called Trees. It goes like this. I'm looking at trees. And I'm looking outside right now because I can see a pine tree here. I'm looking at trees. They may be one of the things I will miss most from the earth. And many of the ones I've seen already I cannot remember. And though I seldom remember the ones I see, or though I seldom embrace the ones I see and have never been able to speak with one, I listen to them tenderly. Their names have never touched them. They've stood round my sleep, and when it was forbidden to climb them, they have carried me in their branches. And just lately I'm going to be teaching that poem this week. And I look at trees, and every time I see a tree now, I see, my goodness, I see this pine tree, and it's about 30 feet tall. But I imagine the roots are exactly that deep as well. So I say, oh my gosh, the root of this is, and I have a much greater appreciation for trees now. It's just like, and it connects me, and I have that feeling of the stories that sometimes we've connected on. And people have given me stories on trees. I have Nancy Rivera just sent me one just this last week by a poet that I had never heard of. I don't know it by heart yet, but it's like every time I go back to that poem, I'm saying a deeper appreciation of what trees are. So it's like a metaphor for things. And the poem that I wrote this poem, and I called it Song. And right now, where did I put it? So this is kind of part of me too. Sometimes I misplace things and I'll have to think about it that as being a resource. So next time I'll have a reason to come back. I have this poem I wrote about song. That song is, it's a feeling, it can be something that we sing, but it's also a way of being, to being in that song. And that's what I'm striving to be in this song so that it flows out like a Rumi poem. Maybe it's better that I don't have it right here, but it just flows through me and it comes through in the way it's supposed to come through today.
Yeah.
So like our
So maybe,
conversation.
so maybe the looking for the written word of the song is part of that metaphor, looking for the song, however it's yet to come. Say, could you close us out a little bit with a short little meditation, a little bringing back to our hearts?
Yeah, okay. I'm just glancing at the time, so I'll just do this a very short one. So make yourself comfortable and drop your shoulders. Be sure to put a smile on your face. Smile is so important. Smile on your face, and then visualize the light in your lower dantian. Beautiful glowing light, like a little moon. And you tell that light the purpose. So you set the intention. Could be physical, mental, spiritual. And then imagine, visualize as if it's already accomplished. So you're setting that intention of, and already giving thanks for it as you're setting the intention. Thanking the universe for bringing that into being. Then let that light float up to the middle dantian, just below the physical heart. And visualize the light there. And it gets more expansive and bigger, and the heart opens up, like that heart of that community, Rumi's community. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The light gets bigger and bigger, and you feel that light, how powerful you are. And inside of that light, there's just a tiny little spark, a divine spark. That's the essence of the whole thing. Just notice that spark, that little light, and hold it in your mind and feel how good it feels to know that that's always there, that connection with the divine. And now if there's just one place, just choose one place in your body where you feel like it would benefit from opening that and making that place open up. And bring the light to that place and feel that light just get very powerful and expansive, and feel how good it feels with the message completely healed. That light that's inside of us and that we get from the divine and that we get from just feel feels and know that it's already accomplished. And then let that light go back to the physical heart, and then down to the lower dantian, and take 3 purifying breaths. And rub your hands together nice and warm. Massage the face. And massage the ears. Give the ears a little tug at the bottom. And every cell of the body is smiling. And I somehow I got this little giggle. I thought of a quote from there's a guy named Wolfman Jack. This might be before your time. A long time ago, there was this guy on the radio. His name was Wolfman Jack, and he'd say, "The shortest distance between two people is a smile." So I like to think of that as every cell of the body is smiling. It connects us, and just a little thing like smiling and letting the cells smile will bring much cheer and joy to us. And so I thank you for having me today.
Well, once again, Jerry, thank you so much. Our hearts are connected. You're a friend to my heart and with my heart. And so we'll end now. Have a good time. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye. Till next time.